I said, "You need to leave. Now. Or I'm calling security." That's what the store manager said, loud, clipped, and cold enough to freeze the entire room. It was 10:27 a.m. on Madison Avenue, and the store hadn't even been open for a full hour. But already, the tension inside the flagship boutique of Maison Elle felt thick enough to choke on. A few customers paused near the handbag wall. 2 employees leaned against the marble checkout, watching like it was a show. And standing in the middle of it all was a black woman in a camel coat and low heels, holding a silk gown in one hand and the full weight of her composure in the other. Vanessa Royal. Age 44. Quiet. Direct. Wealthy. Not that anyone here had even bothered to ask. She didn't look angry. Yet. But her silence was the kind that comes after you've been here before. That moment where your heart races not out of fear, but out of calculation. Because when you've worked your whole life to build something clean, honest, and powerful, and you're still treated like a thief? That's not just racism. That's insult layered on humiliation, built into muscle memory. The store manager, a woman in her early 30s named Vivian LeClaire, stood behind the front counter, arms crossed, mouth tight. "Look, ma'am. This boutique is by appointment only. We don't allow drop-ins, especially not ones who come in here acting like they own the place." Vanessa said nothing. Yet. She glanced at her phone, thumb hovering over a screen. Vivian rolled her eyes. "If you think pulling out your phone is gonna scare me, don't bother. This is Maison Elle, not some bargain bin in the Bronx." Another staffer, a smug-looking brunette named Alyssa, added, "You people always think money can buy respect. It can't." Vanessa blinked. Once. Then very quietly said, "That's the difference between you and me. I don't buy respect. I command it." Before we go deeper, let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a place and watched someone's smile vanish the moment they saw your skin? Have you ever had to breathe through someone else's arrogance just to keep your freedom intact? If you have, then you already know where this is going. And if you haven't, then listen closely. Because what happened next wasn't just karma. It was precision. Vivian stepped around the counter now, holding her phone, voice rising. "I'm calling the police. You've been asked to leave and you're refusing. That's trespassing." "You can call whoever you want," Vanessa said. And then, with deliberate calm, she reached into her bag and pulled out something none of them expected. A folded legal document. Embossed. Stamped. She unfolded it on the counter and tapped one line. "Leaseholder, Royal Development Group LLC." A pause. Silence fell. Vivian squinted. "You brought a fake lease agreement into a clothing store?" Vanessa looked her square in the eye. "I didn't bring it. I own it." What no one in the store knew, not Vivian, not Alyssa, not the security guard she just called, was that Vanessa Royal wasn't just a shopper. She was the managing partner of the real estate firm that owned the building. She had purchased it 6 months ago in a quiet $42 million deal during a portfolio reshuffle. The store? Just one tenant on a long list. And now? They just handed her all the leverage she needed. 3 minutes later, a man in a navy suit and earpiece walked in, building compliance director. Behind him came a second man with a badge from legal affairs. Vivian turned pale. "Wait, what is this?" Vanessa stepped aside, calmly. "I told you I had an appointment." The compliance director handed over a file. "Per the anti-discrimination clause in your lease agreement, Ms. Royal has initiated a performance breach review. Effective immediately, your location is under audit." Alyssa whispered, "What does that mean?" Vanessa answered, "It means you'll be lucky if you're still employed by lunch." One of the customers, a middle-aged black woman who had quietly watched from the accessories section, stepped forward, eyes wide. She looked at Vanessa and whispered, "You really own all this?" Vanessa smiled. "I do now." And just like that, a boutique that once mocked her for being out of place now stood frozen, waiting for her decision. And this was just the first floor. By noon, the footage had gone viral. Not because Vanessa posted it, she didn't need to. Someone in the store had filmed her calmly laying down legal documents while the manager sputtered excuses. Someone else caught the moment security stood frozen, unsure who to protect when they realized the trespasser owned the entire building. The clip? 1.3 million views in under 3 hours. The comments? A storm. They tried to kick out the landlord. Black woman power. That composure? That's legacy. Let's be honest. If she looked different, they would have offered champagne. But Vanessa wasn't on social media. She was back at her office, a minimalist corner suite downtown with glass walls, soft jazz playing low, and an executive assistant pacing with a folder in her hands. "They've done this before," said Tessa, her assistant. Vanessa looked up. "What?" Tessa laid out printouts across the desk. Internal HR complaints. Anonymous reviews from Glassdoor. Even 2 formal civil rights claims against Maison L, all quietly settled, no media coverage. This same manager, Vivian, has had multiple run-ins, Tessa said. Only difference this time? She picked the wrong one. Vanessa's jaw tightened. This wasn't about a dress. This was a pattern. She picked up one report. The language was chilling. Black shopper followed from room to room. Latina customer asked to show proof of funds before trying on shoes. Staff advised to prioritize elegant clientele. And at the bottom? Handwritten notes from a manager's training manual. Be polite, but firm. Maintain exclusivity. Watch for attitude. Use security when unsure. Vanessa closed the folder. That wasn't policy. That was racial profiling wrapped in perfume and price tags. She stared out the window, fingers steepled, breath slow. This wasn't about firing a store manager anymore. This was about holding a brand accountable. At 3:15 p.m., Vanessa's lawyer joined the call. Technically, he said, you could terminate the lease and remove their occupancy within 48 hours. Good, she said. He hesitated. There's risk. If they sue, claim breach, they'll say this was retaliatory. Vanessa smirked. Then I'll show the footage. The paper trail. The handbook notes. She leaned forward. Let them sue. I dare them to put their prejudice on public record. That evening, she drafted a letter. Not legal. Personal. An open letter, addressed directly to Maison L's US CEO. You say your brand represents elegance and power. But today, one of your stores represented arrogance and profiling. I was humiliated. Not as a customer, but as a human. You don't just owe me an apology. You owe everyone you've ever turned away at the door. Effective immediately, I am terminating your Madison Avenue lease under Clause 7(b), violation of equitable service standards. You have 72 hours to vacate. Consider it your last walk-in. She didn't CC lawyers. She CC'd the press. By midnight, news outlets picked it up. Black CEO shuts down store that tried to expel her. From humiliation to eviction, Vanessa Royal reclaims the space. Fashion blogs called it one of the boldest moves in luxury retail history. Civil rights groups sent statements of support. But not everyone was cheering. The Maison L executive team? Panicking. One VP called her office. Begged to talk quietly. Another offered to fly in personally to reconcile. Vanessa didn't take the calls. She answered with a press statement. I'm not here for hush money. I'm here for cultural memory. The next morning, a grandmother from Harlem left a voicemail on the boutique's customer line. My daughter saved up for 3 years to try on a dress at your store. You told her she wasn't your target demographic. So I just want to say, thank you. Because now you're not ours either. And still, the story wasn't over. Because Tessa, her assistant, walked in holding another document. I pulled the property portfolio, she said. You're not gonna like what I found. Vanessa opened it. Paused. Then stared. Vivian LeClaire? Wasn't just a manager. She was also listed as a minority investor in several other luxury franchises. Ones Vanessa's firm had just approved for expansion leases. Oh, hell no, Vanessa whispered. She didn't just try to throw me out of one store. She's been profiting off businesses built to exclude women like me. Now the question wasn't whether Vanessa would shut down one boutique. It was whether she'd take the whole system down with it. The deeper Vanessa dug, the worse it got. She wasn't dealing with one bad boutique manager. She was staring at a pattern. A machine. A well-oiled network of discrimination, cloaked in luxury branding, hidden behind soft lighting and high price tags. Over the next 48 hours, her team pulled up lease records, staffing logs, and ownership disclosures. What they found? 6 more boutiques in her firm's real estate portfolio, all linked to the same parent brand, Maison L, and all with nearly identical customer complaints from women of color. Same language. Same excuses. Same rot. But that wasn't the twist. That came from Tessa, her assistant, who entered Vanessa's office carrying a thin manila folder and a pale, shaken expression. You need to see this, she said, voice low. Vanessa looked up. What is it? Tessa set the folder down. Inside was a printed email chain, unearthed from an anonymous tip. A conversation between Maison L's regional VP, a franchise operator, and someone from a private consultancy group. Subject: mitigating risk during urban leasing wave. One line stood out in bold. If we continue being forced into these inner-city luxury expansions, we need to develop filters, staff who understand how to pre-screen clients without creating noise. Another. If someone like Royal gets in, she'll use her presence to weaponize access. And then this. Keep the floor staff on alert. Her profile is spreading fast. Vanessa stared at the line. Her fingers clenched. They knew I was coming. This wasn't just profiling. It was premeditated gatekeeping. A strategy. A literal campaign to suppress access, while taking advantage of properties her firm was building in diverse neighborhoods. They used my company's growth, she said quietly, to spread exclusion with my own bricks. She stood up. Suddenly calm again. Which, for Vanessa, meant the storm had begun. At 9:42 a.m. the next morning, she did something she'd been holding back. She called in a favor. Not from a journalist. Not from a lawyer. But from Devin Pierce, her ex-husband. A powerful, principled, and notoriously stubborn investigative reporter, who had once taken down a congressman with nothing but a USB stick in a 3-hour interview. They hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. She didn't miss him. But she respected him. I have a list, she said over the phone. And I think you're going to want to be the first one to read it. By noon, Devin was in her office, listening silently as Vanessa outlined the entire thing. The lease. The store. The footage. The emails. The quote, her presence will weaponize access. Devin didn't take notes. He just sat back, staring at her. Then finally said, "You realize what you're about to do, right?" Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Yes. I'm going to war." He smiled. "I meant, you're about to make a lot of enemies." Vanessa smiled back. "Good. That means they'll know exactly where to find me." That afternoon, she scheduled a press conference. But not for press. For Fashion Week. Maison L was scheduled to debut their fall collection on Saturday. Vanessa booked the venue next door. Same time. Same hour. Same audience. But instead of runways and designers, she was about to drop documents, video, and whistleblower testimony. She titled the event, "Access isn't fashionable, it's a right." As buzz grew online, the media dubbed it the anti-show, the realest room at Fashion Week, the walk-in they couldn't stop. And just as momentum began to rise, the lights went out. Not in her office, not in her team's system, but in her bank account. Vanessa stared at the screen. Account temporarily frozen, security review pending. She checked another. Same message. Another. Same. Her personal card declined. Her business account blocked. And then her phone lit up with a single text from an unknown number. "Stay in your lane." She stared at it, expression flat. Then looked at Tessa. "They're scared." Tessa nodded slowly. "Should we stop?" Vanessa turned her phone face down. "No. We go louder." It was the most anticipated event at Fashion Week, and it had nothing to do with fashion. At exactly 11 a.m., while Maison L's models prepared backstage next door, guests, influencers, and reporters filed into an industrial warehouse space with no flashing signs, no runway, no designer perfume. Just a black banner at the entrance. "Access isn't fashionable. It's a right." Hosted by Vanessa Royal. Inside, rows of white folding chairs. A podium. 2 screens. No music. No champagne. No distractions. Just anticipation. And the woman they all came to see. Vanessa stepped on stage with no makeup. No jewelry. A matte black power suit with no label visible. No brands. Just presence. She took the mic. "They tried to dress exclusion and luxury," she said. "They made profiling sound polite. They made discrimination a style choice." The room was silent. But behind every silk curtain, there are receipts. And I brought mine. She held up the folder. Then clicked the remote. Behind her, the first slide filled the screen, an internal memo from Maison L management. Pre-screen non-traditional guests. Redirect without confrontation. Avoid escalation unless necessary. More slides followed. Staff complaints. Hidden policy notes. Photos of women, Black, Latina, South Asian, all denied access in the last year across 6 locations. The room gasped. Whispers grew. One older woman in the front row wiped her eyes. A man at the back stood frozen, visibly trembling. And then Vanessa dropped the final slide. "She's a risk. Shut her out before she weaponizes visibility." The quote was real. Timestamped. Signed by a Maison L regional director. "Now," Vanessa said, "you might ask, why didn't I just walk away?" She stepped forward. "Because I've walked away before. And all that does is leave the next girl to fight alone." A murmur rippled through the crowd. People clapped. Then stood. But before the applause could swell, a sudden buzz tore through the air, staff members rushing to Vanessa from offstage, whispering into her ear. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Tessa stepped forward with a phone. "Emergency," she whispered. "It's Devin." Vanessa took the call. Her voice low. "Devin? I'm mid-event." "What is it?" His voice was tight. "You've been hit." "What?" "Maison L just filed an emergency injunction. Federal. They're accusing you of corporate defamation, and they named me as a co-conspirator." Vanessa froze. "They're trying to frame this as illegal whistleblowing," he said. "They want to bury you in lawsuits." But it wasn't just a legal stunt. There was something else. "Vanessa, someone from your team leaked the deck before your speech." She blinked. "What?" "They sold it. The whole thing. To Maison L." in exchange for a consulting role. Vanessa's chest tightened. Who? A pause. Then Devin said the name. Tessa. Vanessa turned slowly. Her assistant, the one who stood beside her through everything, wouldn't meet her eyes. She looked down, pale, silent. A bead of sweat rolled down her cheek. I had debts, she mumbled. They offered enough to wipe them clean. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't crack Vanessa open. It just hardened her. Like steel cooling. You didn't just sell me out, she said. You sold every woman I was standing up for. Security was called. Tessa was removed, gently, quietly. The room shifted. Reporters typed faster. The story had just gained another layer. Betrayal. Corporate warfare. A woman fighting alone. But Vanessa wasn't done. She stepped back to the mic. They thought I'd fall apart on stage. But this stage isn't mine. She pointed to the crowd. It's yours. And it just got bigger. Later that night, while Maison L struggled to explain why their runway show was barely covered in the press, Vanessa's full keynote hit YouTube. By morning, 2.1 million views. Hashtags trending worldwide. Hashtag access is power. Hashtag royal justice. Hashtag she owns the room. And a message in Vanessa's inbox from an unlikely sender. I'm sorry. Tessa. No excuses. Just shame. And with it, an attached file she didn't know her. The names of 3 other boutique brands, all hiding similar practices. Vanessa stared at the list. 3 new battlefields. 3 new doors to kick in. By the time the court hearing began, the whole country knew her name. Vanessa Royal, the woman who didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't swing. She simply pulled out receipts and flipped the system. And now, Maison L was suing her for defamation. But she wasn't intimidated. She welcomed it. Because for once, she said into the camera the night before the trial, they'll have to explain their behavior in front of someone they can't profile, a judge. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the benches. Former customers showed up in solidarity. One woman wore a shirt that said, "Try me. Try on. Try harder." The brand's attorneys tried to spin the story. Said Vanessa's viral speech had caused economic harm, had smeared a historic company's name. They claimed her documentation lacked context. They even tried to paint her as emotionally reactive. But the judge didn't buy it. Not after Vanessa's lawyers played the footage again, the original moment, the one where the boutique manager had stared her down and said, "You don't belong here." And then the emails. The memos. The quote, "Her presence is a threat." In the end, the verdict wasn't even close. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning Maison L couldn't sue her again. But he didn't stop there. He made a statement. The court recognizes that the harm in this case wasn't caused by Ms. Royal's words. It was caused by the truth her words revealed. And just like that, Maison L's mask cracked. 3 more lawsuits followed. 2 of their regional directors resigned. One of their celebrity brand ambassadors, a Grammy-winning singer, dropped out of their campaign and reposted Vanessa's keynote with the caption, "We wear grace. We don't wear brands that shame it." But the biggest moment came 1 month later. Vanessa was invited to speak at the Global Women in Power Summit in Atlanta. Final speaker. Closing slot. Thousands in the room. Millions streaming online. She walked out to silence. No music. No intro. Just a single spotlight. And this is what she said. "Some people build walls to keep us out. But some of us were raised to look at walls and see blueprints. They said I didn't belong in their boutique. So I built a business that decides who gets to open one. They tried to make me feel small. So I made the truth so big they couldn't ignore it. And here's what I want to say to every girl who's ever walked into a room and been told, "You're not what we expected." She paused, let it settle, then stepped closer to the edge of the stage. Good. Because what they expect is silence. And what you carry is a storm. Now I want to speak directly to you. Wherever you're watching from. Maybe it was a store, a job interview, a school hallway, a boardroom, a lounge, a dinner table. Somewhere you walked in and someone decided you didn't look like power. Let me ask you, have you ever been asked to prove who you are before they even let you speak? Have you ever been followed, questioned, side-eyed, not for what you did, but for what they feared you might be? If you have, you're not alone. Vanessa's story? It's not fiction. It's reflection. And if it hit you, speech balloon, tell us where you're watching from. Loudspeaker, share it with someone who needs this fire. Bellhop bell, subscribe if you believe power doesn't whisper. It walks in and takes its place. Because the next time someone tells you, you don't belong here, you tell them, that's fine. I'm not staying in here anyway. I'm building something too big for this room.